Beowulf, Chapter 23. Beowulf's fight with Grendel's mother. Beowulf spake, Ecgtheow's son, recall now, O famous kinsman of Halfdene, prince very prudent, now to part I am ready. Gold friend of earlmen, what erst we agreed on? Should I lay down my life in lending thee assistance? When my earth joys were over, thou wouldst evermore serve me. Instead of a father, my faithful thanemen, my trusty retainers, protect thou and care for. Fall I in battle, and Hrothgar beloved, send unto Hygelac the high-valued jewels thou to me hast allotted. The lord of the Geatmen may perceive from the gold, the Rathling may save it. When he looks on the jewels that a gem-giver found, I, good over measure, enjoyed him while able, and the ancient heirloom on Firth permit thou, the famed one to have, the heavy sword splendid, the hard-edged weapon, with Runting to aid me. I shall gain me glory, or grim death shall take me. The Atheling of Geatmen uttered these words, and heroic did hasten, not any rejoinder, was willing to wait for the wave current swallowed, the doughty in battle, then a day's length elapsed ere he was able to see the sea at its bottom. Early she found then who 50 of winters the course of the currents kept in her fury, grisly and greedy that the grim one's dominion some one of men from above was exploring. Forth did she grab them, grappling the warrior with horrible clutches, yet no sooner she injured his body unscathed, the byrnie outguarded, that she proved but powerless to pierce through the armor. The limb mail locked with loath-grabbing fingers, the sea-wolf bare then, when bottomward came she, the ring prince homeward, that he after was powerless, he a daring to do it, to deal with his weapons, but many a mere beast tormented him swimming. Flood beasts no few with fierce biting tusks did break through his byrnie, the brave one pursued they, the earl then discovered he was down in some cavern, where no water whatever anywise harmed him, and the clutch of the current could come not near him, since the roofed hole prevented brightness a-gleaming. Firelight he saw flashing resplendent. The good one saw then the sea bottom's monster. The mighty mere woman he made a great onset, with weapon of battle his hand not desisted from striking. The war blade struck on her head then, a battle song greedy, the stranger perceived then. The sword would not bite, her life would not injure, but the falcon failed the folk prince when straightened. Erst had it often onsets encountered, oft cloven the helmet, the fated one's armor. 'Twas the first time that ever the excellent jewel had failed of its fame. Firm-mooded after, not heedless of valor, but mindful of glory, was Hygelac's kinsman, the hero chief angry. Cast then his carved sword covered with jewels, that it lay on the earth, hard and steel-pointed. He hoped in his strength, his hand grapple sturdy, so any must act whenever he thinketh to gain him in battle glory unending, and is reckless of living, the lord of the war-geats. He shrank not from battle, seized by the shoulder, the mother of Grendel, then mighty in struggle, swung he his enemy, since his anger was kindled, that she fell to the floor with furious grapple. She gave him requital early thereafter, and stretched out to grab him, the strongest of warriors. Faint-mooded stumbled till he fell in his traces, foot-going champion. Then she sat on the hall guest, and wielded her war-knife, wide-bladed flashing, for her son would take vengeance, here only ban. His breast armor woven bowed on his shoulder, it guarded his life, the entrance defended. 'Gainst sword-pointed edges, Ecgtheow's son there had fatally journeyed, champion of Geatmen. In the arms of the ocean had the armor not given, close-woven corselet, comfort and succor, and had God most holy not awarded the victor, all-knowing Lord, easily did heavens, ruler most righteous, arrange it with justice, uprose he erect, ready for battle. Chapter 24. Beowulf is double conqueror. Then he saw mid the war gems a weapon of victory, an ancient giant sword of edges a doughty, glory of warriors, of weapons 'twas choicest, only 'twas larger than any man else was able to bear to the battle encounter, the good and splendid work of the giants. He grasped then the sword-hilt knight of the Scyldings, bold and battle-grim, brandished his ring-sword, hopeless of living, hotly he smote her, that the fiend woman's neck firmly it grappled, broke through her bone joints, the bilfully pierced her, fate-cursed body she fell to the ground then, the hand-sword was bloody, the hero exulted, the brand was brilliant, brightly it glimmered, just as from heaven gem-like shineth the torch of the firmament. He glanced along the building, and turned by the wall then. Hygelac vassal, raging and wrathful, raised his battle sword, strong by the handle. The edge was not useless to the hero in battle, but he speedily wished to give Grendel requital for the many assaults he had worked on the West Danes, not once but often, when he slew in slumber the subjects of Hrothgar, swallowed down 15 sleeping retainers of the folk of the Danemen, and fully as many carried away a horrible prey. He gave him requital, grim raging champion, when he saw in his rest place, weary of conflict, Grendel lying of life joys bereaved, as the battle at Herat erstwhile had scathed him. His body far bounded, a blow when he suffered, death having seized him, sword smiting heavy, and he cut off his head then, early this noticed. The clever carles who as comrades of Hrothgar gazed on the sea deeps, that the surging wave currents were mightily mingled, the mere flood was gory, of the good and the grey-haired together held converse, the hoary of head that they'd hoped to not see again, the atheling ever, the exulting in victory. He'd returned there to visit the distinguished folk ruler. Then many concluded the mere wolf had killed him. The 9th hour came then, from the Ness edge departed, the bold-mooded Scyldings, the gold friend of heroes, homeward betook him. The strangers sat down then, soul-sick, sorrowful, the sea-waves regarding. They wished and yet weened not their well-loved friend lord to see any more. The sword-blade began then, the blood having touched it, contracting and shriveling. With battle icicles 'twas a wonderful marvel, that it melted entirely, like to ice when the Father unbindeth the bond of the frost and unwindeth the wave bands. He wieldeth dominion of time and of tides, a truth firm creator, nor took he of jewels more in the dwelling, lord of the weathers, though they lay all around him, than the head of the handle handsome with jewels. The brand early melted, burnt was the weapon, so hot was the blood, the strange spirit poison, that in it did perish. He early swam off then, who had bided in combat the carnage of haters, went up through the ocean, the eddies were cleansed, the spacious expanses, when the spirit from far land his life put aside in his short-lived existence. The seaman's defender came swimming to land then, doughty of spirit, rejoiced in his sea gift, the bulky burden which he bore in his keeping. The excellent vassals advanced then to meet him. To God they were grateful, were glad in their chieftain, that to see him safe and sound was granted them. From the high-minded hero then helmet and byrnie were speedily loosened. The ocean was putrid, the water neath welkin weltered with gore. For did they fare then, their footsteps retracing, merry and mirthful measured the earth-way, the highway familiar, men very daring, bear then the head from the sea cliff burdening. Each of the earlmen excellent valiant, 4 of them had to carry with labour the head of Grendel to the high towering gold hall, up stuck on the spear till 14 most valiant, and battle-brave Geatmen came there going, straight to the place the prince of the people measured the mead ways, their mood-brave companion. The atheling of earlmen entered the building, deed valiant men adorned with distinction, doughty shield warrior to address King Hrothgar. Then hung by the hair the head of Grendel was borne to the building where Beothanes were drinking. Lord before earlmen and eke for the lady, the warriors beheld then a wonderful sight. Chapter 25. Beowulf brings his trophies, Hrothgar's gratitude. Beowulf spake, offspring of Ecgtheow, Lo, we blithely have brought thee, bairn of Halfdene, Prince of the Scyldings, these presents from ocean, which thine eye looked on for an emblem of glory. I came off alive from this, narrowly escaping. In war 'neath the water, the work with great pains I performed, and the fight had been finished quite nearly. Had God not defended me, I failed in the battle. Ought to accomplish, aided by Runting, though that weapon was worthy but the wielder of earth folk. Give me willingly to see on the wall a heavy hold, hand swording hanging in splendor. He guided most often the lorn and the friendless, that I swung as a weapon the wards of the house. Then I killed in the conflict when occasion was given me. Then the battle sword burned, the brand was then lifted, as the blood current sprang hottest of war sweats. Seizing the hilt from the foes, I off bore it. I avenged as I ought to their acts of malignity, the murder of Danemen. I then make thee this promise, thou'lt be able inherit, careless to slumber, why the throng of heroes and the thanes of thy people, every and each of greater and lesser, and thou needest not fear for them for the self-same direction, as thou formerly feared, O folk lord of Scyldings. End day for earlmen to the age-hoary men then, the grey-haired chieftain, the gold-fashioned sword hilt, old work of giants was thereupon given. Since the fall of the fields it fell to the keeping of the wielder of Danemen, the wondersmith's labor, and the bad-moted being abandoned this world then, opponent of God, victim of murder, and also his mother it went to the keeping of the best of the world kings, where waters encircle, who the Scot divided in Scylding dominion. Hrothgar discoursed, the hilt he regarded, the ancient heirloom where in old-time contentions beginning was graven, the gurgling currents, the flood slew thereafter the race of the giants. They had proved themselves daring, that people was loath to. The Lord everlasting, through lash of the billows, the Father gave them final requital. So in letters of rune on the clasp of the handle, gleaming and golden, 'twas graven exactly, set forth and said, whom the sword had made for, finest of irons, who first it was wrought for, wreathed at its handle and gleaming with serpents. The wise one then said, silent they all were, son of the old Halfdane, he may say unrefuted, who performs mid the folk-men fairness and truth. The hoary old ruler remembers the past, that battered by birth in the brain of the nobles. Thy fame is extended through far-away countries, good friend Beowulf, over all the races. Thou holdest all firmly, hero-like strength with, prudent of spirit, I'll prove myself grateful. As before we agreed on, thou granted for long shalt become a great comfort to kinsmen and comrades, a help unto heroes. Heremod became not, such the Scyldings' successor of Egwilla. He grew not to please them, but grievous destruction and direction death woes to Danemen attracted. He slew in anger his table companions, trustworthy counselors, till he turned off lonely from world joys away, wide famous ruler. Though high ruling heaven in hero strength raised him, it might exalted him o'er man of all nations, made him supreme, yet a murderous spirit grew in his bosom. He gave them no ring gems. To the Danes after custom endured he unjoyful, standing the straits from strife that was raging. Long some folk sorrow, learn them from this. Lay hold over virtue, thou laden with winters. I have sung thee the measures, 'tis a marvel to tell it. How all-ruling God from greatness of spirit giveth wisdom to children of men. Manor and earlship, all things he ruleth. He often permitteth the mood thought of man of the illustrious lineage to lean to possessions, allows him earthly delights at his manor, a high burg of heroes to hold in his keeping, maketh portions of earth folk hear him, and a wide-reaching kingdom, so that wisdom failing him, he himself is unable to reckon its boundaries. He liveth in luxury, little debars him, nor sickness nor age, no treachery, sorrow, becloudeth his spirit, conflict nowhere, no sword hate appeareth, but all the world doth wend as he wisheth, the worse he knoweth not, till errant arrogance inward pervading waxeth and springeth when the warder is sleeping, the god of the soul, with sorrows encompassed, too sound in his slumber the slayer is near him, who with bow and arrow aimeth in malice. Chapter 26. Hrothgar moralizes, rest after labor. Then bruised in his bosom he with bitter-toothed missile, is hurt neath his helmet from harmful pollution. He is powerless to shield him by the wonderful mandates of the loath cursed spirit, what too long he hath holden. Him seemeth too small, savage he hoardeth, nor boastfully giveth gold-plated rings. The fate of the future flouts and forgetteth, since God had erst given him greatness no little, wielder of glory, his end day anear. It afterward happens that the bodily dwelling fleetingly fadeth, falls into ruins. Another lay holdeth, who doleth the ornaments, the nobleman's jewels, nothing lamenting. Heedeth no terror, O Beowulf dear, best of the heroes, from bale strife defend thee, and choose thee the better, counsels eternal. Beware of arrogance, world-famous champion, but a little while lasts thy life vigor's fullness. 'Twill after hap early that illness or sword edge shall part thee from strength, or the grasp of the fire, or the wave of the current, or the clutch of the edges, or flight of the war spear, or age with its horrors, or thine eyes bright flashing shall fade into darkness. 'Twill happen full early, excellent hero, that death shall subdue thee, so that Danes a half-century I held under heaven, helped them in struggles, 'gainst many a race in Middle Earth's regions, with ash wood and edges, the enemy's none. On earth molest me low, offsetting change now. Come to my manor, grief after joyance, when Grendel became my constant visitor. Inveterate hater, I from that malice continually travailed with trouble no little. Thanks be to God that I gained in my lifetime, to the Lord everlasting, to look on the gory head with mine eyes after long-lasting sorrow. Go to the bench now, battle adorned, joy in the feasting of jewels in common. We'll meet with the many when morning appeareth. The Geatman with gladsome ganged he immediately, to go to the bench as the clever one bade him. Then again as before were the famous for prowess, hall inhibitors handsomely banqueted, feasted anew that night veil fell then, dark of the warriors the courtiers rose then. The great-haired was anxious to go to his slumbers, the hoary old Scylding hankered the Geatman, the champion doughty greatly to rest him, and earlmen early outward did lead him. Fact from his faring, far from country springing, who for etiquette's sake of all liegemans needed regard, such as a seaman at the time were bounden to feel. The big-hearted rested, the building outpowered, spacious and gilded. The guest was then slumbered till the sable-clawed raven blithely foreboded the beacon of heaven. Then the bright shining sun over the bottoms came going. The warriors hastened, the head of the peoples were ready to go again to their peoples. The high-mooded Pharaoh would wherever thenceforward look for his vessel, the valiant one bade then, offspring of Eglath, off to bear hunting, to take this weapon, his well-beloved iron. He him then thanked him for the gift, saying good he accounted, the war-friend and mighty, nor chide he with words then. The blade of the brand 'twas a brave-mooded hero, when the warriors were ready, arrayed in their trappings. The atheling deer to the daemon advanced then, on to the dais where the other was sitting. Grim-mooded hero greeted King Hrothgar. Chapter 27. Sorrow at Parting. Beowulf spake, Ecgtheow's offspring, we men of the water wish to declare now, fared from far lands, we're firmly determined to seek King Hygelac. Here we have fitly been welcomed and feasted as heart would desire it. Good was the greeting of greater affection. I am anywise able ever on earth to gain at thy hands, ruler of heroes. Then yet I have done, I shall quickly be ready for combat and conflict o'er the course of the waters. Learn I that neighbors alarm thee with terror, as haters did Wilhelm. I hither will bring thee for help unto heroes, henchmen by thousands. I know as to Hygelac, the lord of the Geatmen, though young in years, he yet will permit me, by words and by works, ward of the people, fully to furnish thee forces and bear thee my lance to relieve thee if liegemen shall fail thee, and help of my hand strength if rhetoric be treating, bairn of the king at the court of the Geatmen. He thereat may had him friends in abundance, far away countries he were better to seek for, who trusts in himself. Hrothgar discoursed then, making rejoinder, these words thou hast uttered. All-knowing God hath given thy spirit. Never heard I an earlman thus early in life, more clever in speaking, thou cautious of spirit, mighty of muscle, in mouth answers prudent. I count on the hope that happen it ever, that missile shall rob thee of Hrethel's descendant, edge-horrid battle and illness of weapon, deprive thee of prince of people's protector, and life thou yet holdest the sea Geats will never find a more fitting folklore to choose them. Gem-ward of heroes then thou mightest prove thee, if the kingdom of kinsmen thou carest to govern. Thy mood spirit likes me, the longer the better. Beowulf dear, thou hast brought it past that to both these peoples peace shall be common. To Geat folk and Daemon the strife be suspended. The secret assailings thy suffered in your days, and also that jewels be shaled where I govern. The wide-stretching kingdom and the many shall visit o'er the oceans with excellent gift gems. The ring-adorned bark shall bring o'er the currents presents and love gifts. This people I know, toward foeman and friend firmly established, after ancient etiquette everywise blameless. Then the warden of earlmen give him still farther, kinsman of Halfdene, a dozen of jewels, bade him safely seek with the presents his well-beloved people early returning. Then the noble-born king kissed the distinguished, dear-loved liegeman. The Dane prince saluted him, and clasped his neck. Tears from him fell. From the grey-headed man he two things expected, age and revered, but rather than second, that bold in council they'd meet thereafter. The man was so dear that he failed to suppress the emotions that moved him, but in mood fetters fastened. The long famous hero longeth in secret, deep in his spirit, for the dear beloved man. Thou not a blood kinsman, Beowulf then sword, God's splendid warrior, walked over the meadows, exulting in treasure the sea-going vessel. Riding at anchor awaited its owner. As they pressed on their way, then the present of Hrothgar was frequently referred to, a folk king indeed, that every way blameless till age did debar him the joys of his might, which hath many oft injured. Chapter 28. The Homeward Journey, the Two Queens. Then the band of very valiant retainers came to the current. They were all clad in armor, in link-woven burnies. The land warder noticed the return of the earlmen. He erstwhile had seen them. Nowise with insult he greeted with strangers from the naze of the cliff, but rode on to meet them. Said the bright-armored visitors vesselward travelled, welcome to Wedders. The wide-bosomed craft then lay on the sand, laden with armor. with horses and jewels, the ring-stemmed sailor, the mast up-towered o'er the treasure of Hrothgar. To the boat-ward a gold-bound brand he presented, that he was afterwards honoured on the ale-bench more highly. As the heirloom's owner set he out on his vessel, to drive on the deep Dane country left he. Along by the mast then a sea garment fluttered, a rope-fastened sail the sea-boat resounded. The wind o'er the waters the wave-floater nowise kept from its journey. The sea-goer travelled, the foamy neck floated forth over the currents, the whale-fashioned vessel o'er the ways of the ocean, till they came within sight of the cliffs of the Geatmen. The well-known headlands the way over hastened, driven by breezes, stood on the shore, prompt at the ocean, the port-ward was ready. Who long in the past outlooked in the distance, at water's edge waiting well-loved heroes. He bound to the bank then the broad-bosomed vessel, fast in the fetters, lest the force of the waters should be able to injure the ocean wood winsome. Bade he up then take the treasure of princes, plate, gold, and fretwork not far was in thence, to go off in search of the giver of jewels. Rethel's son Hygelac at home there remaineth, himself with his comrades close to the sea coast. The building was splendid, the king heroic, great in his hall, Hygd very young was, fine-mooded, clever, though few were the winters, that the daughter of Hereth had dwelt in the borough. But she nowise was cringing, nowhere to go presents of ornaments rare to the race of the Geatmen. Three though the nursed anger, excellent folk queen, heart-burning hatred, no hero whatever, 'mong household companions her husband accepted, dared to adventure to look at the woman, with eyes in the daytime, but he knew that death chains had wreathed were wrought him early thereafter. When the hand-strife was over, edges were ready, that fierce raging sword-point had to force a decision. Murder bale show, such no womanly custom for a lady to practice, though lovely her person, that a weaver of peace and pretense of anger, a beloved liegeman of life should deprive. Soothly is hindered Hemming's kinsman, other ale-drinking earlmen asserted, that fearful folk sorrows fewer she thought then, treacherous doings since first she was given, adorned with gold to the war-hero youthful, for her origin honoured, when Offa's great palace, o'er the fallow flood by her father's instructions, she sought on her journey where she afterwards fully, famed for her virtue, her fate on the king's seat, enjoyed in her lifetime, love did she hold with the ruler of heroes, the best that it's told me, of all the earthmen that oceans encompass, of earl kindreds endless, hence Offa was famous, far and widely by gifts and by battles, spear valiant hero, the home of his fathers, he governed with wisdom, whence Omar did issue, for help unto heroes, Hemming's kinsman, grandson of Garmund, great in encounters. Chapter 29. Beowulf and Hygelac. Then the brave one departed, his band along with him, seeking the seashore, the sea marches treading. The wide-stretching shores, the world-candled glimmered, the sun from the southward. They proceeded then onward, early arriving where they had heard that troop lord, on goeth slayer excellent youthful, folk prince and warrior was distributing jewels. Close in his castle the coming of Beowulf was announced in a message quickly to Hygelac, that the folk troops defender forth to the palace. The linden companion alive was advancing, secure from the combat courtward a-going. The building was early inward made ready for the foot-going guests as the good one had ordered. He sat by the man then who had lived through the struggle, kinsman by kinsman, when the king of the people had in lordly language saluted the dear one, in words that were formal, the daughter of Hereth, coursed through the building carrying mead cups. She loved the retainers, tendered the beakers. To the high-minded Geatman Hygelac gan then, pleasantly plying his companion with questions. In the high-towering palace a curious interest tormented his spirit, what meaning to see in the sea-guest's adventures Beowulf worthy. How throve your journeying when thou thoughtest suddenly far over the salt streams to seek an encounter? A battle at Herat hast bettered for Hrothgar, the famous folk leader, his far published sorrows. Any at all in agony bellows. I mused upon torture, distrusted the journey of the beloved liegeman. I long time did pray thee, by no means to seek out the murderous spirit, to suffer the South Danes themselves to decide on. Grappling with Grendel, to God I am thankful, to be suffered to see thee safe from thy journey. Beowulf answered, Bairn of old Ecgtheow, 'tis hidden by no means, Higelac chieftain, from many of men the meeting so famous. What mournful moments of me and of Grendel were passed in the place where he pressing affliction on the victory Scyldings scathefully brought, anguish forever that all I avenged, so that any under heaven of the kinsmen of Grendel needeth not boast of that cry in the morning, who longest liveth of the long-going kindred. Encompassed by moorland, I came in my journey to the royal ring hall, Hrothgar to greet there. Soon did the famous scion of Halfdene, when he understood fully the spirit that led me, assign me a seat with the son of his bosom. The troop was in joyance, mead gladder greater, neither arch of the ether now ever beheld I, mid-hall building holders the highly famed queen. Peace tie of peoples oft passed through the building, cheered the young troopers, she oft tendered a hero. A beautiful ring band ever she went to sitting, oft the daughter of Hrothgar in view of the courtiers, to the earl at the end ale vessel carried, whom frae where I heard then all hall sitter's title, when nail-adorned jewels shall give to the heroes, gold-bedecked youthful to the glad son of Froda. Her forth had been plighted the friend of the Scyldings. The god of the kingdom hath given his sanction, and counts in advantage for a part of the quarrels, a portion of hatred to pay with the woman. Some were not rarely when the ruler has fallen, the life-taking lance relax in its fury for a brief breathing spell, though the bride be charming. Chapter 30. Beowulf narrates his adventures to Higelac. It well may discomfort the prince of the Heatherbards, and each of the thane men of earls that attend him, when he goes to the building escorting the woman, that the noble-born Danemen, the knights, should be feasting. There gleam on his person the leavings of elders, hard and ring-bite, Heatherbard's treasure, while they wielded their arms till they misled to the battle their own dear lives and beloved companions. He saith at the banquet who the caller beholdeth, an ancient ash warrior who earlmen's destruction clearly recalleth, cruel his spirit, sadly beginneth sounding the youthful thane champion's spirit through the thoughts of his bosom, war grief to waken, in this word answer speaketh, art thou able, my friend, to know when thou seest it, the brand which thy father bare to the conflict, in his latest adventure, neath visor of helmet, the dearly loved iron, where Danemen did slay him, in brave-mooded Scyldings on the fall of the heroes, when vengeance was sleeping, the slaughter place wielded. Even now some man of the murderer's progeny, exulting in ornaments, entered the building, boasts of his blood shedding, oft beareth the jewel, which thou shouldst wholly hold in possession. So he urgeth and mindeth on every occasion, with woe-bringing words till waxeth the season, when the woman's thane for the works of her father, the bill having bitten, blood gory sleepeth, fated to perish, the other one thenceforward scapeth alive, the land knoweth thoroughly. Then the oaths of the earlmen on each side are broken, when rancors unresting are raging in Geld, and his wife-love waxeth less warm after sorrow. So the Heatherbard's favour not faithful I reckon, their part in their treaty not true to the Danemen. Their friendship not fast I further shall tell thee, more about Grendel, that thou fully mayst hear, ornament giver, what afterward came from the hand rush of heroes, when heaven's bright jewel over earth fields had glided, the stranger came raging, the horrible night fiend, us for to visit. Where wholly unharmed the hall we were guarding, to Honcio happened a hopeless contention. Death to the doomed one, dead he fell foremost, girded war champion, to him Grendel became then. To the vassal distinguished a tooth-weaponed murderer, the well-beloved henchman body all swallowed, not the earlier off empty of handed, the bloody tooth murderer, mindful of evils, wished to escape from the gold-giver's palace, but sturdy of strength he strove to outdo me. Hand-ready grappled, a glove was suspended, spacious and wondrous in art fetters fastened, which was fashioned entirely by touch of the craftsman. From the dragon's skin by the devil's devices, he down in its depths would do me unsadly. One among many did duo raging, though sinless he saw me, not so could it happen. When I in my anger upright did stand, 'tis too long to recount how requital I furnished for every evil to the earlman's destroyer. 'Twas there, my prince, that I proudly distinguished thy land with my labors. He left and retreated. He lived his life a little while longer, yet his right hand guarded his footsteps inherent, and sad-mooded thence to the sea bottom fell, mournful in mind for the might rush of battle. The friend of the Scyldings with gold that was plated, with ornaments many much requited me. When daylight had dawned and down to the banquet we had sat us together, there was chanting and joyance. The age-stricken Scylding asked many questions and of old times related, oft lighting ringing harp strings joy-telling were touched by the brave one. Now he uttered measures mournful and truthful. Then the large-hearted land king a legend of wonder truthfully told us, now troubled with years. The age-hoary warrior afterward began to mourn for the might that marked him in youth days. His breast within boiled when burdened with winters. Much he remembered from morning till night then. We joyed us therein as etiquette suffered, till the second night season came unto earth folk. Then early thereafter the mother of Grendel was ready for vengeance. Wretched she journeyed, her son had death ravished, the wrath of the Geatmen. The horrible woman avenged her offspring, and with mighty main strength murdered a hero. There the spirit of Aesir, aged adviser, was ready to vanish, nor with when morn had lightened, were there any wise suffered to consume him with fire. Folk of the Danemen, the death-weakened hero, nor the beloved liegeman to lay on the pyre. She the corpse had oft carried in the clutch of the foeman, 'neath mountain brook's flood to Hrothgar 'twas saddest of pains that ever had preyed on the chieftain. By the life of thee and land prince then me, besought very sadly in sea currents eddies, to display my prowess to peril my safety. My deeds accomplished, much did he promise. I found then the famous flood currents cruel, horrible depth water, a while unto us two. Hand was in common, the currents were seething, with gore that was clotted in Grendel's fierce mother's head I off hacked in the hall at the bottom. With huge reaching sword edge hardly I wrested my life from her clutches, not doomed was I then. But the warden of earlmen afterward gave me jewels in quantity, kinsman of Halfdene. Chapter 31. Gift-giving is mutual. So the beloved land prince lived in decorum. I had missed no rewards, no needs of my prowess, but he gave me jewels, regarded my wishes. Halfdene his bairn, I bring thee then, atheling of earlmen, off them gladly. And still unto thee is all my affection. But few of my folkkin find I surviving. But thee to Higelac bade he in there to carry the boar image, banner, battle high helmet, iron grey armor, the excellent weapon. In song measures said this suit for the battle. Hrothgar presented, bade me expressly, his wise-mooded atheling, thereafter to tell thee the whole of its history, said King Haregar owned it. Dane prince for long, yet he wished not to give then the mail to his son, though dearly he loved him. Hereward the hardy hold all in joyance. I heard that there followed hard on the jewels 2 braces of stallions of striking resemblance. Dappled and yellow he granted him usance of horses and treasures, so a kinsman should bear him, no web of treachery weave for another, nor by cunning craftiness cause the destruction of trusty companion, most precious to Hygelac. The bold one in battle was the bairn of his sister, and each unto another mindful of favours. I am told that to Hygd he proffered the necklace, wonder gem rare that Wealhtheow give him. The troop leader's daughter, a trio of horses, slender and saddle bright, soon did the jewel embellish her bosom when the beer feast was over. So Ecgtheow's bairn brave did prove him, war-famous man by deeds that were valiant. He lived in honour, beloved companions. Slew not carousing, his mood was not cruel, but by hand strength hugest of heroes then living. The brave one retained the bountiful gift that the Lord had allowed him. Long was he wretched, so that sons of the Geatmen accounted him worthless, and the Lord of the Liegemen loth was to do him mickle of honour. When meat cups were passing, they fully believed him idle and sluggish. An indolent atheling to the honour-blessed man there came requital for the cuts he had suffered. The folk troops defender bade fetch to the building the heirloom of Hrethel, embellished with gold, so the brave one enjoined it there was jewel no richer, in the form of a weapon mong Geats of that era. In Beowulf's keeping he placed it and gave him 7 of thousands manor and lordship. Common to both was land among the people, estate and inherited rights and possessions. To the second one specially spacious dominions, to the one who was better it afterward happened. In days that followed befell the battled thanes, after Hygelac's death, and when Heardred was murdered, with weapons of warfare neath well-covered targets, when valiant battlemen and victory bands sought him. War-Skylfing heroes harassed the nephew of Herrick in battle to Beowulf's keeping, turned there in time extensive dominions. He fittingly ruled them 50 of winters. He, a man ruler wise, was manor warder old, till a certain one gan on gloom-darkening nights, a dragon to govern who guarded a treasure. A high-rising stone cliff on hearth was the greyish, a path neath it lay unknown unto mortals. Some one of earthmen entered the mountain, the heathenish horde laid hold of with ardour. Chapter 32. The Horde and the Dragon. He sought of himself who sorely did harm him, but for need very pressing the servant of one of the sons of the heroes hate blows evaded. Seeking for shelter in the sin-driven warrior took refuge within there. He early looked on it when the onset surprised him. He a gem vessel saw there many of such like. Ancient ornaments in the earth cave were lying, as in days of yore some of men of illustrious lineage as a legacy monstrous. There had secreted them, careful and thoughtful. Dear valued jewels, death had oft snatched them. In the days of the past, and the one man moreover, of the flower of the folk, who fared the longest, was fain to defer it, friend mourning warder, a little longer to be left in enjoyment of long-lasting treasure. A barrow already stood on the plain, the stream currents nigh to, new be the ness edge unnathe of approaching. The keeper of rings carried within a ponderous deal of the treasure of nobles. Of gold that was beaten, briefly he spake then. Hold thou, O earth, now heroes no more may the earnings of earlmen lowest in the bosom. Worthy men won them, war death hath ravaged, perilous life bale all my warriors. Liege men beloved, who this life have forsaken, who all pleasures saw, no sword bearer have I, and no one to burnish the gold-plated vessel. The high-valued beaker my heroes are vanished. The hardy helmet belung with gilding shall be reaved of its riches, the ring-cleansers slumber, who were charged to have ready visors for battle, and the byrnie that bided in battle encounter, or breaking of war shields the bite of the edges, molds with the hero the ring-twisted armor. Its lord being lifeless no longer may journey, hanging my hero's harp joy is vanished. The rapture of glee would no excellent falcon swoops through the building, no swift-footed charger grindeth the gravel, a grievous destruction. No few of the world folk widely hath scattered, so woeful of spirit one after all, lamented mournfully, moaning in sadness, by day and by night, till death with its billows dashed on his spirit. Then the ancient dusk-scather found the great treasure standing all open, he who flaming in fiery flies to the barrows, naked war-dragon nightly escapeth, encompassed with fire. Men under heaven widely beheld him. 'Tis said that he looks for the hoard in the earth, where old he is guarding the heathenish treasure. He'll be nowise the better, so 300 winters the waster of peoples held upon earth that excellent hoard hall, till the forementioned earlmen angered him bitterly. The bead-plated beaker he bare to his chieftain, and fullest remission for all his remissness, begged of his liege lord. Then the hoard was discovered, the treasure was taken, his petition was granted. The lorn-mooded liegeman his lord regarded, the old work of earth folk. 'Twas the earliest occasion when the dragon awoke, the strife was renewed there. He snuffed along the stone, then stout-hearted found he the footprint of foemen. Too far had he gone, with cunning craftiness, close to the head of the fire-spewing dragon, so undoomed he may scape from anguish and exile with ease, who possesseth the favor of heaven. The hoard warden eagerly searched over the ground, then would meet with the person that caused him sorrow, while in slumber reclining. Gleaming and wild he oft went round the cavern, all of it outward, not any of earthmen we have seen in the desert. Yet he joyed in the battle, rejoiced in the conflict. Off he turned to the barrow, sought for the gem cup. This he soon perceived then, that some men or other had discovered the gold, the famous folk treasure. Not fain did the hoard ward wait until evening. Then the ward of the barrow was angry in spirit. The loathed one wished to pay for the dear-valued drink cup with fire. Then the day was done as the dragon would have it. He no longer would wait on the wall, but departed. Fire-impelled, flaming, fearful the start was, to earls in the land, as it early thereafter to the giver of gold was grievously ended. Chapter 33. Brave through aged reminiscences. The stranger began then to vomit forth fire, to burn the great manor. The blaze then glimmered. For anguish to earlmen, not anything living, was the hateful air-goer willing to leave there. The war of the worm widely was noticed. Feud of the foemen afar and near, how the enemy injured the earls of the Geatmen. Harried with hatred, back he tried the treasure, to the well-hidden cavern at the coming of the daylight. He had circled with fire the folk of those regions, with brand and burning. In the barrow he trusted, in the wall and his war might the weaning deceived him. Then straight was the horror to Beowulf published. Early forsooth at his own native homestead, the best of buildings was burning and melting. Gift seat of Geatmen, 'twas a grief to the spirit of the good-mooded hero, the greatest of sorrows. The wise one weened then that wielding his kingdom against the ancient commandments he had bitterly angered the Lord everlasting with lorn meditations. His bosom welled inward as was nowise his custom. The fire-spewing dragon fully had wasted the fastness of warriors, the waterland outward, the manor with fire, the folk-ruling hero, prince of the weathers was willing to wreak him. The warman's defender bade them to make him. Earlman's atheling, an excellent war-shield, wholly of iron, fully he knew then that wood from the forest was helpless to aid him. Shield against fire, the long-worthy ruler must live the last of the limited earth days, of life in the world and the worm along with him. Though he long had been hoard wealth in plenty, then the ring prince disdained to seek with a war band. With army extensive, the air-going ranger, he felt no fear of the foeman's assaults, and he counted for little the might of the dragon, his power and prowess, for previously dared he a heap of hostility, hazarded dangers, war-thane when Hrothgar's palace he cleansed, conquering combatant clutched in the battle. The kinsmen of Grendel of kindred detested, 'twas of hand-fights not least where Hygelac was slaughtered, when the king of the Geatmen with clashings of battle. Friend lord of folks in Frisian dominions, offspring of Hrethel, perished through sword drink, with battle swords beaten, thence Beowulf came then, on self-help relying, swam through the waters. He bare on his arm, lone going 30, outfits of honor when the ocean he mounted. The het wars by no means had now need to boastful of their fighting afoot who forward to meet him carried their war shields, not many returned from the brave-mooded battle night back to their homesteads. Ecgtheow's ban o'er the bright courses swam then, long go alone to his landfolk returning, where Hygde to him tended treasured kingdom. Rings and dominions her soon she not trusted, to be able to keep the kingdom devised him, 'gainst alien races on the death of King Hygelac. Yet the sad ones succeeded not in persuading the atheling in any way ever to act as a suzerain, to herded or promise to govern the kingdom. Yet with friendly counsel in the folk he sustained him, gracious with honor till he grew to be older. Wielded the Wedders, wide-fleeing outlaws. Other as sons sought him over the waters. They had stirred a revolt against the helm of the Skelfings, the best of the sea kings, who in Swedish dominions distributed treasure, distinguished folk leader. 'Twas the end of his earth days, injury fatal. By swing of the sword he received as a greeting, offspring of Hygelac, Ongthaow's ban, later departed to visit his homestead. When Heardred was dead, let Beowulf rule them, govern the Geatmen. Good was that folk king. Chapter 34. Beowulf seeks the dragon. Beowulf's reminiscences. He planned requital for the folk leader's ruin. In days thereafter to Edgils the wretched, becoming an enemy, other sons then went with a war troop over the wide-stretching currents. With warriors and weapons, with woe journeys cold, he, after revenged him, the king's life he took. So he came off uninjured from all of his battles, perilous fights, offspring of Ecgtheow. From his deeds of daring till that day most momentous, when he fate-driven feared to fight with the dragon. With 11 companions the prince of the Geatmen went lowering with fury to look at the fire drake. Inquiring he found now how the feud had arisen. Hate to his heroes, the highly famed gem vessel was brought to his keeping through the hand of the informer. That in the throng was 13th of heroes, that caused the beginning of conflict so bitter. Captive and wretched must sad-mooded thenceforward point out the place. He passed them unwillingly to the spot where he knew of the notable cavern, the cave under earth not far from the ocean, the anger of eddies which inward was full of jewels and wires, a warden uncanny, warrior weaponed, warded the treasure. Old under earth, no easy possession for any of earth folk access to get to. Then the battle-brave atheling sat on the naze edge, while the gold friend of Geatmen gracious saluted his fireside companions. Woe was his spirit, death boding, wavering, weird very near him. Who must seize the old hero, his sole treasure look for, dragging aloof his life from his body. Not flesh hidden long was the folk leader's spirit. Beowulf spake, Ecgtheow's son. I survived in my youth days many a conflict. Hours of onset all I remember. I was 7 winters old when the Jewel Prince took me, High Lord of Heroes, at the hands of my father. Hrethel the Hero King had me in keeping, gave me treasure and feasting, our kinship remembered. Not ever was I any less dear to him. Knights in the boroughs than the bands of his household. Herebold and Hakthin and Hygelac mine, to the eldest son justly by axe of a kinsman. Was murder bed strewn since then Hakthin from Hornbow. His sheltering chieftain shot with an arrow, erred in his aim and injured his kinsman. One brother the other with blood-sprinkled spear. 'Twas a fearless fight finished in malice. Sad to his spirit, the folk prince, however, had to part from existence with vengeance untaken. So to hoard-headed hero 'tis heavily crushing, to live to see his son as he rideth. Young on the gallows then measures he chanteth, a song of sorrow when his son is hanging. For the raven's delight, and aged and hoary, he is unable to offer any assistance. Every morning his offspring's departure is constant recalled, he cares not what for. The birth of an heir in his burrow enclosures, since that one thorough death pain the deeds hath experienced. He heart-grieved beholds in the house of his son the wine-building wasted, the wind-lodging places. Reaved of their roaring, the riders are sleeping, the knights in the grave, there no sound of the harpwood. Joy in the yards as of yore were familiar. Chapter 35. Beowulf's Last Battle. He seeks then his chamber, singeth a woe song, one for the other, all too extensive. Seemed homesteads and plains, so the helm of the wedders, mindful of Herebold, heart sorrow carried, stirred with emotion, nowise was able to wreak his ruin on the ruthless destroyer. He was unable to follow the warrior with hatred, with deeds that were direful, though dear he not held him. Then, pressed by the pang this pain occasioned him, he gave up glee, God-lighted, elected. He left to his sons as the man that is rich does. His land and fortress when from life he departed. Then was crime and hostility twixt Swedes and Geatmen. O'er the wide-stretching water warring was mutual, burdensome hatred when Hrethel had perished, and on Ecgtheow's offspring were active and valiant. Wished not to hold to peace over sea, but round Rose now boreth often accomplished. Cruelest massacre this my kinsman avenged, the feud and fury, as 'tis found on inquiry, though one of them paid it with forfeit of life joys, with price that was hardy, the struggle became then fatal to Hathkin, lord of the Geatmen. Then I heard that at morning one brother the other, with edges of iron egged on to murder, whereon Ecgtheow masketh onset of Eofor. The helmet crashed, the hoary-haired Skylfing, sword-smitten fell, his hand then remembered. Feud hate sufficient, refused not the death blow. The gems that he gave me with jewel-bright sword I quitted in contest, as occasion was offered. Land he allowed me, life joy at homestead, manor to live on, little he needed. From Gepids or Danes or in Sweden to look for, trooper less true, with treasure to buy him. 'Mong foot soldiers ever in front I would hie me, alone in the vanguard, and ever more gladly. Warfare shall wage, while this weapon endureth, that late and early often did serve me, when I proved before heroes the slayer of Dagreffen, knight of the Hugmen he by no means was suffered. To the king of the Frisians to carry the jewels, the breast decoration, but the banner possessor. Bowed in the battle, brave-mooded Atheling, no weapon was slayer, but war grapple broke then, the surge of his spirit, his body destroying. Now shall weapon's edge make war for the treasure, and a hand and firm sword. Beowulf spake then, boast words uttered the latest occasion. I braved in my youth days battles unnumbered. Still am I willing the struggle to look for. Fame deeds perform, folk warden prudent. If the hateful despoiler forth from his cavern seeketh me out, each of the heroes, helm-bearers sturdy, he thereupon greeted, beloved co-liegeman, his last salutation. No brand would I bear, no blade for the dragon. Wist I will wave my war to accomplish, else with the monster as with Grendel I did it. But fire in the battle hot I expect there, furious flame burning, so I fixed on my body, target and war mail the ward of the barrow. I'll not flee from a foot length the foeman uncanny. At the wall 'twill befall us, a fate decreeth. Each one's creator, I am eager in spirit. With the winged war hero to away with all boasting, bide on the barrow with Bernies protected, earls in armor with each of us to make better, bear his disaster when the battle is over. 'Tis no matter of yours, and man cannot do it, but me and my only to measure his strength with, the monster of malice meet deeds to accomplish. I with prowess shall gain the gold or the battle. Direful death woe will drag off your ruler. The mighty champion rose by his shield then. Brave under helmet in battle mill went he. 'Neath steep rising stone cliffs the strength he relied on. Of one man alone no work for a coward. Then he saw by the wall who a great many battles had lived through, most worthy when foot tropes collided. Stone archers standing, stout-hearted champion, saw a brook from the barrow bubbling out thenceward. The flood of the fountain was fuming with war flame. Not nigh to the horde for season the briefest could he brave without burning the abyss that was yawning. The drake was so fiery, the prince of the wedders, caused then that words came from his bosom. So fierce was his fury, the firm-hearted shouted. His battle-clear voice came in resounding neath the grey-coloured stone, stirred with his hatred. The horde would distinguish the speech of a man. Time was no longer to look out for friendship. The breath of the monster issued forth first, vapory war sweat out of the stone cave. The earth re-echoed, the earl neath the barrow lifted his shield, lord of the Geatmen. Toward the terrible stranger, the ring-twisted creature's heart was then ready to seek for a struggle. The excellent battle king first brandished his weapon, the ancient heirloom of edges unblunted. To the death planners twain was terror from over. The lord of the troopers intrepidly stood then gainst his high-rising shield when the dragon coiled him. Together in corslet he bided, he went then in blazes, bended and striding, hasting him forward his life and body. The Taj well protected for time periods shorter than wish demanded for the well-renowned leader, where he then for the first day was forced to be victor, famous in battle as fate had not willed it. The lord of the Geatmen uplifted his hand then, smiting the fire drake with sword that was precious, that bright on the bone the blade edge did weaken, bit more feebly than his folk leader needed, burdened with bale griefs than the barrow protector, when the sword blow had fallen, was fierce in his spirit, flinging his fire flames of battle. Gleamed then afar the gold friend of wedders, boasted no conquests, his battle sword failed him, naked in conflict as by no means it ought to, long trusty weapon 'twas no slight undertaking, that Ecgtheow's famous offspring would leave, the drake cavern's bottom he must live in some region, other than this by the will of the dragon, as each one of earthmen existence must forfeit. 'Twas early thereafter the excellent warriors met with each other anew and afresh. The horde ward took heart, gasps heaved from his bosom. Sorrow he suffered, encircled with fire. Who the people erst governed, his companions by no means, were banded about him, bands of the princes, with valorous spirit, but they sped to the forest, seeking for safety. The soul deeps of one were ruffled by care, kinlove can never aught in him waver who well doth consider. Chapter 36. Wiglaf the Trusty. Beowulf deserted by friends and by sword. The son of Wellstan was Wiglaf entitled, shield warrior precious, prince of the Skylfings. Aelfir's kinsman, he saw his dear liege lord, enduring the heat neath helmet and visor. Then he minded the holding that erst he had given him, the Wegmunding warriors' wealth-blessed homestead. Each of the folk rights his father was wielded. He was hot for the battle, his hand seized the target. The yellow bark shield he unsheathed his old weapon, which was known among earthmen as the relic of Eanmund. Orther's offspring, whom exiled and friendless Weohstan did slay with sword edge in battle, and carried his kinsman, the clear shining helmet, the ring-made byrnie, the old giant weapon that Onalar gave him, his boon fellow's armor. Ready war trappings he the few did not mention, though he'd fatally smitten the son of his brother. Many a half year held the treasures, the bill and the byrnie, till his bairn became able, like his father before him, fame deeds to accomplish. Then he gave him 'mong Geatmen a goodly array of weeds for his warfare. He went from life then. Old on his journey, 'twas the earliest time then, that the youthful champion might charge in the battle. Aiding his liege lord, his spirit was dauntless, nor did kinsman's bequest quail at the battle. This the dragon discovered on their coming together. Wiglaf uttered many a right saying, said to his fellows, said was his spirit, I remember the time when, tasting the mead cup, we promised in the hall the Lord of us all, who gave us these ring treasures, that this battle equipment, swords and helmets, we'd certainly quite him, should need of such aid ever befall him. In the war band he chose us for his journey spontaneously, stirred us to glory, and gave me these jewels, since he held and esteemed us trustworthy spearmen, hardy helm-bearers, though this hero achievement our Lord intended alone to accomplish. Ward of his people for most of achievements, doings audacious he did among earthfolk. The day is now come when the ruler of earthmen needeth the vigor of valiant heroes. Let us wend us towards him, the war prince, to succor, while the heat here rageth, horrible firefight. God, what in me 'tis mickle thy liefer, the blaze should embrace my body and eat it. With my treasure bestower, me seemeth not proper to bear our battle shields back to our country, lest first we are able to fell and destroy the long-hating foemen to defend the life of the prince of the Wedders. Well do I know 'tisn't earned by his exploits, he only of Geatmen. Sorrows should suffer, sink in the battle. Brand and helmet to us both shall be common. Shield cover byrnie, through the bale smoke he stalked then, went under helmet to the help of his chieftain. Briefly discoursing, Beowulf dear, perform thou all fully, as thou formerly saidst. In thy youthful years, the while yet thou livest, thou would let thine honor not even be lessened. Thy life should save thee, mighty in actions, athling undaunted with all of thy vigor. I'll give thee assistance. The dragon came raging, wild-mooded stranger, when these words had been uttered. 'Twas the second occasion, seeking his enemies, men that were hated with hot gleaming fire waves. With blaze billows burned the board of its edges. The fight armor failed then to furnish assistance to the youthful spear hero, but the young aged stripling quickly advanced neath his kinsman war target. Since his own had been ground up in the grip of the fire, then the warrior king was careful of glory. He soundly smote with sword for the battle, that it stood in the head by hatred driven. Nageling was shivered, the olden iron made. Brand of Beowulf in battle deceived him. 'Twas denied him that edges of iron were able to help in the battle. The hand was too mighty. Whichever weapon, as I heard on inquiry, outstruck in its stroke when to struggle he carried. The wonderful war sword, it waxed him no better than the people despoiler, third of his onsets. Fierce raging fire drake of feud hate was mindful. Charged charged on the strong one when chance was afforded. Heated was war grim, seized on his neck. With teeth that were bitter he bloody did wax with. Soul gore seething, sword blood in waves boil. Chapter 37. The Fatal Struggle. Beowulf's Last Moments. Then I heard that at need of the king of the people, the upstanding earlmen exhibited prowess, vigor and courage as suited his nature. He his head did not guard, but the high-minded liegeman's hand was consumed when he succored his kinsman. So he struck the strife-bringing strange-comer lower, Earl Thane in armor that in went with weapon, gleaming and plated, that gained then the fire, later to lessen. The liege lord himself then retained his consciousness, brandished his war knife, battle sharp bitter that he bare on his armor. The Wedder lord cut the worm in the middle. They had felt the enemy, life drove out then. Puissant prowess the pair destroyed him. Land chiefs related, so a liegeman should prove him. A thaneman when needed, to the prince 'twas the last of his era of conquest by his own great achievements. The latest of world deeds, the wound then began, which the earth-dwelling dragon erstwhile had wrought him, to burn and to swell. He soon then discovered that bitterest bale woe in his bosom was raging, poison within. The atheling advanced then, that along by the wall he prudent of spirit might sit on a settle. He saw the giant work, how arches of stone strengthened with pillars, the earth hall eternal inward supported. Then the long worthy liegeman laved with his hand he, far famous chieftain, gory from sword edge, refreshing the face of his friend lord and ruler, sated with battle, unbinding his helmet. Beowulf answered, of his injury spake he, his wound that was fatal, he was fully aware. He had lived his allotted life days enjoying the pleasures of earth, then past was entirely his measure of days, death very near. My soon I would give my now battle equipments, had any of heirs been ever after me granted. Along of my body this people I governed. 50 of winters, no king among my neighbors dared to encounter me with comrades in battle, try me with terror, the time to me ordered. I bided at home, mine own kept fitly, sought me no snares, saw me no many. Oaths and injustice, joy over all this, I'm able to have, though ill with my death wounds. Hence the ruler of earthmen need not to charge me with the killing of kinsmen when cometh my life out. Forth from my body, fare though with haste now, to behold the hoard neath the hoar greyish stone, where loved Wiglaf, now the worm is a-lying, sore wounded sleepeth, dissessed of his treasure. Go thou in haste, the treasures of old I, gold wealth may gaze on together see lying. The ether bright jewels by easier be able, having the heap of hoard gems to yield my life and the land folk whom long I have governed. Chapter 38. Wiglaf plunders the dragon's den. Beowulf's death. Then heard I that Wihstan's son very quickly. These words being uttered heeded his liege lord, wounded and war-sick went in his honour, his well-woven ring mail neath the roof of the barrow. Then the trusty retainer treasured gems many, victorious saw when the seat he came near to. Gold treasure sparkling spread on the bottom, wonder on the wall and the worm creature's cavern. The ancient dawn flyers' vessels are standing, cups of the ancients of cleansers bereaved, robbed of their ornaments. There were helmets in numbers, old and rust-eaten, arm bracelets many, artfully woven. Wealth can easily, gold on the sea bottom, turn into vanity. Each one of the earthmen arm him who pleaseth, and he saw there lying an old golden banner, high o'er the hoard of hand wonders greatest, linked with lacets, a light from it sparkled. that the floor of the cavern he was able to look on, to examine the jewels, sight of the dragon. Not any was offered, but Edgeoff carried him. Then I heard that the hero the hoard treasure plundered, the giant work ancient reeved in the cavern, bare on his bosom the bakers of platters, as himself would fain have it, and took off the standard. The brightest of beacons the bill had erst injured, its edge was of iron, the old ruler's weapon. He whom long watched as ward of the jewels, who fire terror carried hot for the treasure, rolling in battle in middlemost darkness, till murdered he perished, the messenger hastened, not loath to return, hurried by jewels. Curiosity urged him, if excellent mooded, alive he should find the lord of the Wedders, mortally wounded at the place where he left him. Mid the jewels he found then the famous old chieftain, his liege lord beloved, at his life end's gory. He thereupon gained to leave him with water, till the point of his word pierced his breast-hoard. Beowulf spake, the gold gems he noticed, the old one in sorrow. For the jewels I look on, thanks do I utter for all to the ruler, wielder of worship with words of devotion. The Lord everlasting, that he let me such treasures gain for my people, ere death ever took me, since I have bartered the age life to me granted. For treasure of jewels attend ye henceforward, the wants of the war thanes, I can wait here no longer. The battle famed bid ye to build them a grave hill, bright when I've burned at the brim current's limit, as a memory mark to the men I have governed. Aloft it shall tower on Whale's Ness uprising, that earls of the ocean hereafter may call it. Beowulf's barrow, those who barks ever dashing, from a distance shall drive over the darkness of waters. The bold-mooded troop lord took from his neck then the ring that was golden, gave to his liege men. The youthful war hero, his gold-flashing helmet, his collar and war mail bade him well to enjoy it. Thou art latest left of the line of your kindred, of Wegmunding people weird hath oft carried, all of my kinsmen to the Creator's glory. Earls in their vigour, I shall after them fare. 'Twas the aged liege lord's last spoken word in his musings of spirit, ere he mounted the fire. The battle waves burning from his bosom departed, his soul to seek the sainted one's glory. Chapter 39. The Dead Foes, Wiglaf's bitter taunts. It had woefully chanced then the youthful retainer to behold on earth the most ardent beloved, at his life day's limit lying there helpless, the slayer too lay there, of life all bereaved. Horrible earth drake harassed with sorrow, the round-twisted monster was permitted no longer to govern the ring hordes, but edges of war swords mightily seized him, battle-sharp sturdy, leavings of hammers that still from his wounds. The flyer from far land fell to the earth. Hard by his hoard house hopped he at midnight, not ever through the air nor exulting in jewels suffered them to see him, but he sank then to earthward through the hero chief's handwork. I heard sure it throve then, but few in the land of liegemen of valor, though of every achievement bold he had proved him, to run against the breath of the venomous scather, or the hall of the treasure to trouble with hand blows, if he watching had found the ward of the hoard hall, on the barrow abiding. Beowulf's part of the treasure of jewels was paid for with death. Each of the twain had attained to the end of life so unlasting. Not long was the time till the tardy at battle returned from the thicket, the timid truce breakers 10 altogether, who durst not before play with the lances in the prince of the people's pressing emergency, but blushing with shame with shields they betook him, with arms and armour where the old one was lying. They gazed upon Wiglaf, he was sitting exhausted, foot-going fighter not far from the shoulders of the lord of the people, would rouse him with water. Not whit did it help him, though he hoped for it keenly. He was able on earth, not all in the leader, life to retain and no wise to alter. The will of the wielder, the world ruler's power, would govern the actions of each one of heroes, as he is doing for the young one forthwith then came. Good grim-worded greeting he got for him quickly, whose courage had failed him. Wiglaf discoursed then, Weohstan his son, sad-mooted hero, looked on the hated. He who soothest will utter, can say that the liege lord who gave you the jewels, the ornament armor wherein ye are standing, when on ale bench often he offered to hall men, helmet and byrnie, the prince to his liege men, as best upon earth he was able to find him, that he wildly wasted his war gear undoubtedly, when battle overtook him, the troop king no need had, to glory in comrades yet God permitted him, victory wielder with weapon unaided, himself to avenge when vigor was needed, a life protection but little was able to give him in battle, and I again notwithstanding, helping my kinsman, my strength overtaxing, he waxed the weaker when the weapon I smote on, my mortal opponent, the fire less strongly flamed from his bosom. Too few of protectors came round the king at the critical moment. Now must ornament taking and weapon bestowing, home joyance all cease for your kindred. Food for the people, each of your warriors must needs be bereaved of rights and he holdeth in landed possessions, when faraway nobles shall learn of your leaving your lord so baselessly, the dastardly deed. Death is more pleasant to every earlman than infamous life is. Chapter 40. The Messenger of Death. Then he charged the battle be announced at the hedge, up o'er the cliff where the earl troopers bided. The whole of the morning mood wretched sat them, bearers of battle shields, both things expecting the end of his lifetime and the coming again of the liege lord beloved. Little reserved he of news that was known, who the nest cliff did travel, but he truly discoursed to all that could hear him. Now the free-giving friend lord of the Weders, the folk prince of Geatmen, is fast in his deathbed. By the deeds of the dragon in deathbed abideth, along with him lieth his life-taking foeman. Slain with knife wounds, he was wholly unable to injure at all the ill-planning monster. With bite of his sword edge, Wiglaf is sitting, offspring of Wistan, up over Beowulf, earl over the another whose end day has reached him. Head watch holdeth over heroes unliving, for friend and for foemen. The folk now expecteth a season of strife, when the death of the folk king to Frankmen and Frisians in far lands is published. The war hatred waxed warm against the Hugmen, when Hygelac came with an army of vessels, faring to Friesland, where the Frankmen in battle humbled him and bravely with overnight accomplished, that the mail-clad warrior must sink in the battle. Fell mid his folk troop, nor fret gems presented, the atheling to earlmen, was denied us. Mere wings mercy the men of the Swede lands, for truce or for truth trust I but little. But widely 'twas known then that Ravenswood Ongathau sundered Hackthine for the wraithling from life joys, when for pride overweening the war Skylfings first did seek the Geatmen with savage intentions. Early did Orthaeus, age-laden father, old and terrible, give blow and requital, killing the sea king, the queen mother rescued, the old one in his consort deprived of her gold. Only his mother and Orthaeus also, and then followed the feud nursing foemen till hardly, reaved of their ruler, they Ravenswood entered. Then with vast-numbered forces he assaulted the remnant. Weary with wounds woe often promised, the livelong night to the sad-hearted war troop, said he at morning would kill them with edges of weapons, some of them on the gallows for glee to the fowls. Aid came after to the anxious in spirit, at dawn of the day after Hygelac's bugle and trumpet sound heard they, when the good one proceeded, and faring followed the flower of the troopers. Chapter 41. The Messenger's Retrospect. The blood-stained trace of Swedes and Geatmen, The death rush of warmen widely was noticed, how the folks with each other feud did waken. The worthy one went then with beloved comrades, old and dejected, to go to the fastness. Ongethiau, Earl, upward then turned him, of Higelac battle he'd heard on inquiry. The exultant one's prowess despaired of resistance, with earls of the ocean to be able to struggle against sea-going sailors to save the hoard treasure. His wife and his children he fled after thenceward, old neath the earth wall, then was offered pursuance to the braves of the Swede men, the banner to Higelac. They fared then forth over the field of protection, when the wrestling heroes hedgeward had thronged to them. Then with the edges of iron was Ongethaus driven, the grey-haired to tarry, that the trooper rule had to suffer the power solely of Eofor. Ulf then wildly with weapon assaulted him. One read his son, that for swing of the edges, the blood from his body burst out in currents. Forth neath his hair he feared not, however, grey-headed Skylfing, but speedily quitted the wasting wound stroke with worse exchange, when the king of the Thane troop thither did turn him. The wise-mooted son of Wonred was powerless to give a return blow to the age-hoary man, but his head-shielding helmet first hewed he to pieces, that flecked with gore, perforce he did totter, fell to the earth, not fey was he yet then, but up did he spring through an edge wound had reached him. Then Higelac's vassal, valiant and dauntless, when his brother lay dead, made his broad-bladed weapon, giant sword, ancient defense of the giants, bound of the shield wall, the folk prince succumbed then. Shepherd of people, was pierced to be vattles. There were many attendants who bound up his kinsman, carried him quickly when occasion was granted, that the place of the slain they were suffered to manage. This pending, one hero plundered the other, his armor of iron from Ongethaus ravaged, his hard sword hilted and helmet together. The old one's equipments he carried to Higelac. He the jewels received and rewards mid the troopers, graciously promised and so did accomplish. The king of the Wedders requited the war rush. Rathel's descendant when home he repaired him, to Eofor and Wolf with wide lavish treasures. To each of them granted 100,000 in land and rings wrought out of wire. None upon mid-earth needed to twit him, when the gifts he gave them with the glory they conquered, and to Eofor then gave him his only one daughter, the honor of home as an earnest of favor. That's the feud and hatred, as ween it will happen. The anger of earthmen, that earls of the Swede men, will visit on us when they hear that our leader, lifeless is lying, he who long time protected his hoard and kingdom against hating assailers, who on the fall of the heroes defended of yore. The deed mighty Scyldings did for the troopers, what best did avail them, and further moreover, hero deeds accomplished, now is haste more fitting, that the lord of the liegemen we look upon yonder, and that one carry on journey to death pyre, who ring presents gave us, not all of it all, shall melt with the brave one that's a mass of bright jewels, gold beyond measure, gruesomely purchased, and ending it all, ornament rings too. Bought with his life, these fire shall devour, flame shall cover, no earlman shall wear, a jewel memento, no beautiful virgin have on her neck rings to adorn her, but wretched in spirit, bereaved of gold gems, she shall oft with others be exiled and banished. Since the leader of liegemen hath laughter forsaken, mirth and merriment, hence many a war spear, cold from the morning, shall be clutched in the fingers, heaved in the hand, no harp music's sound shall waken the warrior, but the wan-coated raven, fain over fey, once fierly shall gabble, shall say to the eagle how he sped in the eating, when the wolf his companion he plundered the slain. So the high-minded hero was refreshing these stories, loathsome to hear he lied to a few of weirds and of words. All the war troop arose then, neath the eagle's cape sadly betook them, weeping and wove woeful the wonder to look at. They saw on the sand then soulless lying, his slaughter bed holding him who rings had given them. In days that were done, then the death-bringing moment was come to the good one, that the king was very warlike, wielder of wedders, with wonder death perished. First they beheld there a creature more wondrous, the worm of the field in front of them lying, the foemen before them, fire-spewing dragon, ghostly and grisly, gassed in his terrors, was scorched in the fire. As he lay there he measured 50 of feet, came forth in the night time to rejoice in the air, thereafter departing. To visit his den he in death was then fastened, he would joy in other earth-hollowed caverns. There stood round him beakers and vessels, dishes were lying and dear-valued weapons, with iron rust eaten as in earth's mighty bosom. 1,000 of winters there then he rested, that mighty bequest then with magic was guarded. Gold of the ancients that earlmen not any, the ring hall could touch, save ruling God only. Sooth king of victories gave whom he wished to, he is earthfolk protector to open the treasure, even to such among mortals as seemed to him proper. Chapter 42. Wiglaf's sad story, the horde carried off. Then 'twas seen that the journey prospered him little, who wrongly within him had the ornaments hidden. Down neath the wall the wardeners slaughtered, some few of the folk troop. The feud then thereafter was hotly avenged. 'Tis a wonder where, when the strength-famous trooper has attained to the end of life days allotted, then no longer the many remain with his kinsmen where mead cups are flowing. So to Beowulf happened when the ward of the barrow assaults he sought for, himself had no knowledge how is he leaving this life was likely to happen. So to doomsday famous folk leaders down did call it with curses who accomplished it there, that many should be ever of ill deeds convicted, confined in foul places, fastened in hell bonds, punished with plagues, whom this place should ever ravage. He cared not for gold, rather the wielders. Favor preferred he first to get sight of. Wiglaf discoursed then, Wistan his son, oft many an earlman on one man's account must sorrow endure, as to use it hath happened. The liege lord's beloved we could little prevail on, kingdom's keeper counsel to follow, nor go to the guardian of the gold hoard, but let him lie where he long was, live in his dwelling till the end of the world. Met we a destiny hard to endure, the hoard has been looked at, been gained very grimly, too grievous the fate that the prince of the people pricked to come hither. I was therein and all of it looked at, the building's equipment, since access was given me, not kindly at all entrance permitted. Within under earth wall hastily seized I, and held in my hands a huge weighing burden of hoard treasures costly. Hither out bear them to my liege lord beloved. Life was yet in him, and consciousness also. The old one discoursed then, much and mournfully commanded to greet you. Bade that remembering the deeds of your friend lord, ye build on the fire hill of corpses a lofty burial barrow, broad and far famous. As mid-world dwelling warriors he was widely most honored. While he revels in riches, let us rouse and hasten again to see and seek for the treasure, the wonder neath wall. The way I will show you, the close ye may look at ring gems sufficient, and gold in abundance. Let the buyer with promptness fully be fashioned when forth we shall come, and lift we our lord, then we long shall tarry. Well-beloved warrior near the wielder's protection, then the son of Wistan bade orders be given. Mood valiant man to many of heroes, holders of homesteads, they then from afar, leaders of liege men, should look for the good one, with whom for his pyre the flame shall now swallow. The wan fire shall wax the warrior's leader, who the rain of the iron often abided, when sturdily hurled the storm of the arrows, leapt over linden wall the lance rendered service. Furnished with feathers followed the arrow, now the wise-mooded son of Wistan did summon the best of the braves from the band of the ruler. 7 together near the enemy's roof he went with the 7, one of the heroes, who fared at the front, a fire-blazed torchlight, bare in his hand. No lot then decided who the horde should havoc, when hero earls saw it, lying in the cavern uncared for entirely, rusting to ruin. They rued then but little, that they hastily hence hauled out the treasure, the dear-valued jewels. The dragon-eke pushed then the worm of the wall, let the wave-currents take him. The waters in wine, the ward of the treasures. Their wounded gold on the wane was uploaded, a mass unmeasured. The men leader of them, the hero hoary, to the whale's nest was carried. Chapter 43. The Burning of Beowulf. The folk of the Geatmen got him then ready, a pile on the earth strong for the burning, behung with helmets, hero knights' targets, and bright shining burnies as he begged they should have them. Then wailing war heroes, their world-famous chieftain, their liege lord beloved, laid in the battle. Soldiers began then to make on the barrow, the largest of dead fires, dark of the vapor. The smoke cloud ascended, the sad roaring fire, mingled with weeping, the wind roar subsided, till the building of bone it had broken to pieces, hot in the heart, heavy in spirit. They mood sad lamented the men leader's ruin, in mournful measures the much grieving widow. The men of the wedders made accordingly a hill on the height, high and extensive, of sea-going sailors to be seen from a distance, and the brave one's beacon built there was fire. In 10 days' space with a wall surrounded it, as wisest of world folk could most worthily plan it. They placed in the barrow rings and jewels, all such ornaments and erst in the treasure war-mooded men had won in possession. The earnings of earlmen to earth they entrusted, the gold to the dust where yet it remaineth, as useless to mortals as in foregoing eras. Round the dead mound rolled the doughty in battle, bands of all 12 of the chiefs of the people. More they would mourn, lament for their ruler, speak in measure, mention him with pleasure, weighed his worth and his warlike achievements, mightily commended as 'tis one might praise his liege lord in words and love him in spirit. When the forth from his body he fares to destruction, so lamented mourning the men of the Geats, fond loving vassals, the fall of their lord, said he was kindest of kings under heaven, gentlest of men, most winning of manner, friendliest to folk troops, and fondest of honor.